Hey everybody, I am here with Libre and he is on the ground in Gaza. Despite what you may have not heard in the news right now, Gaza has not gone away. There are a lot of topics that are taking place, and it seems like Gaza has kind of slipped from the international kind of radar. And so the goal of this conversation is to bring that back a little bit. So hopefully you'll see this, hopefully you'll share this. Hopefully, you'll talk to others about reminding them about what is going on in Gaza right now. Over 70,000 people have been killed in Gaza. There's estimates of 170,000 injured and wounded, and those are probably low estimates. 95% of crops destroyed. 90% of the water is undrinkable. They are currently dealing with floods and winter conditions right now. 50% of Gaza is still occupied by Israel. Of course, some of the news you may have heard was that there was a ceasefire in October. However, since then, hundreds of individuals in Gaza have been killed, villages destroyed. So I don't really know if ceasefire is the appropriate term, but the goal here, and I'm going to let Libre introduce himself, is to let you know that things are not good and things are not great in Gaza. And despite what you may hear or not hear in the news, there are still a hell of a lot of people that need help. So, Libre, I really appreciate you taking the time to be in here. One, it is great to be talking to you. Two, I am deeply saddened about the situation that you are in and so many other people are in. And I would love to just give you a minute to kind of introduce yourself and what you're trying to do there in Gaza.
Thank you. I'm Libre. I'm a Boricua humanitarian worker here in the Gaza Strip. I've been here since 2024, since May of 2024, and have volunteered in various different capacities. Uh, I've spent most of my time helping with a medical solidarity organization based in Canada, one of the NGOs that was working or that is working here, called GLIA, and we're uh, doing logistics for the incoming doctors that are coming to volunteer at the public hospitals with a collapsing healthcare infrastructure, intentionally targeted. I mean, the 36 hospitals, very few are left. All of them have been partially or completely damaged. We can talk about that a little bit more later. So I've been helping in the capacity of logistics, volunteered at community kitchens, at schools, and currently I'm in the capacity of doing water distribution because, as you stated, some of the updated numbers, 97% of the water in Gaza is undrinkable. And on top of that, over 85% of water infrastructure and sanitation has been destroyed, which means there is a huge need for drinking water and sanitation because people are getting sick. So that's the current capacity that we're in. We have a desalination plant that we just opened up, and we're distributing water in the community. It's a huge need. People are living in tents, so they don't have running water, um, and that's over 1.5 million people. So there's a huge need for a lot of things because infrastructure has been intentionally destroyed since the beginning of this latest genocide.
Well, yeah, one, thank you for what you're doing, and all the people that you're trying to help. Um, has anything gotten incrementally better? I know obviously the conditions with winter are making things worse. They're adding complications to what is going on. But we hear those of us who are looking, we hear that some food aid is starting to pick up, but it is still not meeting the needs. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Comparatively to maybe like 6 months ago when we were going through famine and everyone was losing weight and literally nothing, there was a total blockade, nothing was coming in. Um, uh, since the um, since the peace deal or ceasefire, whatever you want to call it,
Right.
it's not a ceasefire; it's just a slower genocide. But since October 10th, The agreed upon amount was 600 trucks a day of humanitarian aid. Of that, about 30% is actually getting in. It's still dictated by the Israeli occupation forces because they control the border, and certain things aren't being let in. So, fresh foods, tents, winterization, things to prepare for the weather that we've been having, medicine, and medical instruments are not being allowed in. So specific things are being blocked from coming in. Of all the humanitarian aid that is supposed to come in, about 30% is actually making it to Gazans. So the this is part of the violation of the ceasefire that the Israelis continue to commit. There have been over 500 violations of the ceasefire since October 10th. And it has to do not only with massacres, but also they're not letting in what they said they were going to let in. The border is not being open, and so this is leading to a lot of issues. But relatively speaking, there is more access to foods. The thing is, it's a little bit weird because we're at everyone is hopefully participating in BDS campaigns. Since the Israelis control the border, the some of the stuff that's getting in are things on the BDS list. So Coca-Cola, candy, Nestle, things like this. So the things that are getting in, a lot of them lack nutritional value. We're getting a lot of carb heavy things, right? So the flour, the pastas, the rices, which is we need these things, but we also need the fresh fruits and
Yeah,
a well balanced. Um, but this is actually intentional because Israelis want to give the impression that there's no malnutrition. So eating these carb heavy meals gives the impression that there is a lot more food entering than there actually is. Um, that being said, people are still dying of hunger
yeah.
because there is more, but it doesn't mean that it's accessible.
Not
And that is the
nutrition.
case for. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah,
So so
Sugar,
yeah,
sugar. Yeah,
that's the situation with the
yeah.
yes, sugar and carbs. That's most of what's being let in, and canned food,
Right,
processed canned food.
right. Yes, which goes along with what you mentioned before. I think that was an appropriate term of slower genocide. So now, even with the food that is being allowed in, it is not healthy food. It is not contributing to recovery. It is not tr contributing to people being taken care of. It's checking the square of yes, we're providing, food and sustenance, but it's nothing that's beneficial to a human being. So, um, yeah. Um, how is the situation? Uh,
And
Go ahead.
I was just going to add one slight point, because it's something that is occurring now around this time due to a lack of nutrition and the proper infrastructure. We've actually, and this happened last year during winter here in Gaza as well. But babies are dying because they're not getting enough nutritional value. The body can't hold heat, and families are living in tents. So, due to the lack of nutrition, one of the effects is that people, especially babies and older people, are susceptible to dying because they don't have their bodies aren't able to keep them warm, and they don't live in sound structures. So unfortunately, this is the case.
Yeah. No, yeah, the people on the fridges on the edges are more susceptible to what is going on. What is the power situation like?
There's the people that have access to power are people with access to solar, either solar panels or a generator. A lot of that was built into the infrastructure prior to the genocide, just because it's an issue throughout. Palestine in general, lack of access to electricity. That being said, um, it's very limited, and we're going into winter, so even if you have solar panels, there's not a lot of sun out throughout the day. So the electricity situation is minimal. It's really hard. The generators have been functioning 24/7 since the border has been closed throughout the genocide. The Israelis are also blocking generators, and the parts to repair the generators, which becomes a huge public health issue when we consider that hospitals are running on generators, because they don't, for the most part, solar panels cannot run a fully functioning health facility,
Sure.
let alone a damaged one. So the electricity situation is very unstable, and it's also contingent upon fuel coming in, which is another barrier. And if we don't get these things, well, then we have people dying because we're not able to run the dialysis machines, for example.
Right.
And so this is a huge issue, and people that are living in tents don't have electricity.
Yep.
So a large majority of folks don't have access to constant electricity, and uh, to kind of curb that a little bit, there are like some folks may have a solar panel that they connect to a battery, and they'll be able to charge people's phones in the community for the day. You know, you pay a small like 1 or 2 shekels, and you can charge your phone for the day. And that's kind of how a large majority of people have been doing things. But yeah, the electricity situation is very unstable and can fall if we get in no fuel. Like it's all contingent upon whether or not there's fuel, because the solar panels are not nearly enough to sustain even the minimal infrastructure here.
What are people doing for heat? I mean, is it basically just fires, and clothing, or
So this because people have been forcibly displaced multiple times, this means that every time they're forcibly displaced, that they may be leaving things behind, and they tend to be the heavier things,
yeah,
which, as you can imagine, once you close, a little bit on the heavier side. Um, and and so it's mostly, it's your clothes and fire. But the thing is, you can't have a fire going all day because you have to pay for the wood to run that fire, and that is very limited. So you're trying to cook using as little wood as possible, and you're going to mix it with plastic because
yep,
it makes the fire go longer. The thing is, this has long-term health
yep,
effects. If you have asthma, this is gonna negatively affect your asthma, and so there's a pollution aspect to surviving under these conditions that goes kind of ignored a lot. And on top of this, we're being bombed constantly. So we're being exposed to all of these chemicals that we can't see with the naked eye, that are also having an effect. So we'll wake up in the morning and the city will be covered, in dust from the bombings of the night. And on top of that, mixing in the plastic with the fire to try to find some warmth, um, is is ideal. That being said, blankets, sweaters, waterproof tents have been blocked from coming in, and mobile homes as well, because there's not enough of them, right? So there are limited quantities of blankets, there are limited quantities of all of these things, and we're waiting for 300,000 mobile homes, tents, and winterization kits to get in that are being intentionally blocked, because during the polar storm Byron, where people literally drowned to death, there was a woman that was in her tent, and the winds were so strong it took her with her tent and she drowned to death just from rain because the infrastructure is so bad.
Right.
And so the effects of polar storm Byron, um, the clothes that people did have or the mattresses that they had are soaked, and they're still soaked because there's not enough sun to dry it out during the day. And so whatever clothes people do have, it's they're trying to get it dry so that they could begin to use it. It's there's nothing dignified
Yeah.
about
Right.
having to survive these winter uh, like this.
Right. What what do you see? I know that it seems, especially in Europe, there seems to be more pressure to increase humanitarian aid. Are there any signs of hope or points in time that the people of Gaza are looking at as this may be, a point when things get better? I know that there's been talk about, the beginning of the second phase, if you will, of this ceasefire where Israel withdraws, a little bit. Is there anything for people to look forward to that they think there is a point in time when things may start to incrementally potentially get better?
I think if we're able to reach phase two, it would be a huge sigh of relief, not because the suffering will end, but because um, the there'll be more breathing space. The Israeli occupation forces are based on their agreement that the U.S. wrote. They're militarily occupying. We're supposed to militarily occupy 58% of the Gaza Strip. Now, that being said, daily the Israelis are picking up these yellow blocks and moving this yellow line and pushing it. So they're actually currently occupying more, closer to 60 percent of the Gaza Strip, and they're moving these lines during the nighttime. And if you wake up in the morning and you're behind this yellow line that they just moved, they'll kill you. And they've done it. There was an example in Shajaiya where they shot a 16-year-old and then they drove over him with the tank and split his body in half. Just one example of this kind of arbitrary moving of the yellow line, breaking of the ceasefire agreement, and the violations without any type of accountability. So, which is why if we get to a second phase, it would at least be a step further. And it's something that we weren't able to do during the first supposed ceasefire, which led to, I mean, the famine, and it led to a whole bunch of massacres. People are tired. People are really, over 2 years of genocide, being being under these inhumane conditions. Um, so there's that. And in terms of hope, people will find hope in different things. For example, there's an initiative that was started to open up university courses. So there's a few students that are attending um, and started university classes. Keeping in mind that all the universities have been destroyed. There was 11 universities in the Gaza Strip, and all of them were destroyed either partially or completely. Um, and and we're talking about a place that had one of the world's highest literacy rates before the genocide. It was above 97%. And now students have gone 3 years without being in an academic setting. So this is going to have long-term effects. Um, Unfortunately, no one that isn't from Gaza, everyone has their opinions, but we should really, absolve ourselves of having opinions. People, part of the ethnic cleansing is that students are getting scholarships to study outside. Now, this brings hope because you want a future, you want to be able to continue your studies, The flip side of that is you may never be able to return to your homeland. And so it's part of this ethnic cleansing where they make they make your only supposed option either to stay here and possibly continue to survive this genocide, or to leave and never come back.
Right.
And you're going to face the Islamophobia that the U.S. And Western societies are starting to normalize um, against the victims of the genocide, not the ones carrying it out, right? The ones that are having to survive these conditions. And so people are looking for opportunities to restart and build a future. And some of that may not be here, which is very sad.
Yeah. You mentioned something about the Islamophobia that seems to be festering, and we've seen in the U.S. it seems to be mentioned. I imagine in Europe as well as the growing tide of anti-Semitism. And it's one of those things. Well, have we not forgotten that 70,000 people in Gaza are gone? That a genocide is taking place, 170,000 people, and I don't think it's a rising tide of anti-Semitism against normal Jewish people. I think it's anti-Israeli government, anti-Netanyahu, anti his entire regime and what they have done to people in Gaza in a genocide and trying to normalize it. And those are the people who don't seem to be front and center. When we talk about what's behind some of these issues in different parts of the world, it always seems to be we have to worry about rising anti-Semitism. And my opinion on that would be maybe if the current Israeli government was not committing a genocide, maybe that would help just a little bit. And so it's been very interesting to see how people have kind of slanted it from some U.S. outlets, Western media outlets, and it's very unfortunate. So hopefully things like this and other people talking to people like you in Gaza will help bring back the focus to the true victims. October 7th was horrible, absolutely. But I mean, we're talking about a genocide that is taking place and that a current government is behind that, and then governments are supporting that as well as well as my own government in the United States. Um, so you've highlighted a lot of things that the people in Gaza are currently enduring. How can people watching this or listening to this help? What would be some of the biggest things that you would suggest they do or organizations to support to help in any way the people of Gaza?
I'm gonna go back to what you said,
Yeah,
because I think it's important, and we have to be able to distinguish that it's not anti-Semitic to be against genocide, and
yeah,
most
right.
people we have to distinguish that like I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm anti-Zionist because
Yep,
Zionism is a supremacist ideology that is trying to justify the ethnic cleansing of an indigenous population. I'm against that. And so being anti-Zionist is not being against Jewish people. Jewish people are cool, and
yeah,
plenty of them are against the genocide
yep,
and are not given a platform because it doesn't fit the narrative that they're trying to paint. It doesn't fit the propaganda that they
yep,
want to push, which, they're trying to make this about religion. This has nothing to do about religion. They are killing Palestinian Christians. They're killing Palestinian Jews. They're killing Palestinian Arabs, Palestinian Muslims. Everyone is being killed. Obama is not going to be like, oh, you're Christian? Oh, I'm not going to kill you.
right.
No, they're killing everybody. So this has nothing to do about religion, and we have to be able. Obviously, this takes more historical knowledge to be able to deflect these type of comments. But it's also why they're trying to redefine what Semitism means, which is a whole other topic that we don't need to touch on.
Right.
And then the other thing that I wanted to touch on is the official count is closer to 70,000, but unofficially, like you had said, there's an investigation. There's a investigative report that claims up to 10% of the Gazan population has been genocided, and I think that's closer to reality because as someone that's here that has seen how things work, the numbers that are reported out are only the people that have gotten to the hospital.
Yep.
What we've seen in these recent weeks is the civil defense has been recovering bodies from under the rubble. There
Yes.
are about 15,000 people that are under the rubble that we can't say on paper because they haven't gotten to the hospital that these people are killed, but they're included in the death toll. And when we're able to recover bodies, it still probably won't be everyone. Like just this week, they recovered the body of a child that has been under rubble for a year and a half, right? So they weren't counted in the 70,000, but now that the
Right.
body's recovered, so the official number that is given, to be clear, is just the number of people that have gone to the hospital and there's a death certificate, and we can say for
Yeah.
certain this body is recovered and they have died. Um, in terms of ways that people can help, it every first of all, everybody can help, and it just depends on your capacity and the thing that you are passionate about. There is an organization for whatever your passion is. People are working on it. For example, there's Sulala Animal Rescue that rescues animals. Something that's not really talked about so much during this genocide is that this genocide is attacking all aspects of life, and that includes the land and it includes animals. So there's an animal rescue shelter called Sulala. Um, there's for example, water distribution. So or I'm volunteering with an organization, Eli Elna Elak, that does water distributions here in the north specifically. But we've been distributing water since the beginning of the genocide, but now we have a place where we can produce the water and distribute it instead of just distributing. There are kitchens, Watermelon Relief and Shabab Gaza both run community kitchens and distribute hot, fresh meals to folks, obviously based on what food we have. Um, and if you just want to focus on one-on-one, you can build a relationship with the family in Gaza and help families survive the genocide, because no one has been getting paid throughout the beginning of this genocide due to the banks were destroyed, all the infrastructure is gone, even the doctors, a large majority of the doctors in hospitals working ridiculous shifts, being overworked, saving the lives of people, aren't getting a monthly salary.
Right.
No one here is getting paid on a constant basis. And so, if folks find a family that they would like to support, if they have doubts, there are organizations that do screen families and make sure they're verified families that you're giving money to, if that's a concern for folks. But everyone can help by also educating people and making spaces to talk about it. Like I said, there there is no ceasefire. It's just a slower genocide. But if we don't talk about it, people are still good. Like I talked to people that were on the street protesting, for the end of the genocide. That once the ceasefire was announced, they're like, oh, I had no idea they were still killing people. I was like, yeah, but it's kind of this intentional switch that flips,
Yep.
that makes you say a few things and people are like, oh, our work is done, and it's like, please, no, it's not. you
Yep.
know we're still, I'm listening to drones right now, and usually in about 4 hours is when the bombings start. Um and people, we still need tents. We need, like, people are still dying of malnutrition. And so there are still so many things that we are lacking, that kind of play into the different levels of the genocide. So we need to continue uplifting and educating, and this is not, unfortunately, Palestine is not the only case in which this is happening. There are genocides happening in Congo and Sudan,
Yep.
and we're seeing that the effects of them are very similar. Huge amounts of forcibly internally displaced populations that are being subjected to massacres, to organ theft, unfortunately is something that is on the rise during massacres, and killing of civilian populations. I mean, based off of further investigations, the IDF admitted, the IOF, the Israeli Occupation Forces, admitted that at least 85% of the people they've killed are civilians.
Yep.
They admitted it, and they're getting very bold about what they're doing and what they continue to do because they haven't been stopped. The U.S. is in a quarrel right now with Spain because Spain just blocked a ship from docking that was carrying 1,600 tons of arms that were going to go to Israel. But Spain is not trying to be complicit in the genocide and
Yep.
said you can't dock. So the U.S. is looking to sanction Spain. Why? Because they don't want innocent people to be killed? Because we're asking for an arms embargo as bare minimum, to stop a genocide. So there's a lot, and a huge burden lies on the people in the U.S. because a large majority of the funding is coming out of taxpayers' dollars to kill people instead of funding education, instead of funding mental health, instead of funding access to public health, all the things that we're told we can't get, we're
Yep.
more likely than not paying for Israelis to get it.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And we just uh, the tax dollars should go to building infrastructure and things for people in the U.S.
Yep.
Unfortunately, instead, the IOF is training ICE agents that are doing these horrific raids and policing people that are exercising their right to protest. Um, and I mean,
It's a lot.
the our tax dollars need to be administered significantly better because there's way too much repression against people that are fighting for humanity. No one should have to endure a genocide, and that includes Palestinians. They're not excluded from
Absolutely.
it. Um,
I think we're going to run out of time here in a second, which is unfortunate. We got about 40 minutes. But if possible, I would like to do this again in the future and talk a little bit more because I think it's important that we keep this topic, as you were saying, we keep this topic in the forefront of people's minds and exactly what is going on and how this continues to happen. So that one, we stop it, and then two, we look at accountability for people and make sure that they're held accountable for what has taken place, especially when they're admitting that they killed 85% are civilians. That's the kind of things that I honestly hope and will try not to let slip through the, sands of time. So I can't tell you how thankful I am that you are doing what you're doing and helping people. And I am glad that you're safe, and I hope that remains the case. And I hope we get to talk to you soon again. But on behalf of everybody, thank you for what you're doing. And I hope you're going to be okay.
Shukran. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. All right.